Today's video is about modes. The mode of today's video is modes. The first mode of the major scale is the major scale, also known as the Ionian scale. And the way it works is by this pattern of whole steps and half steps. So we're starting with G, we have a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And so the first thing you're usually taught about modes is if you start on the second scale degree and play all those same notes, that gives you the Dorian scale. If you start on the third scale degree and play all those same notes, that gives you the Phrygian scale. If you start on the fourth scale degree and play all those same notes, that gives you the Lydian scale, and so on and so forth, all the way up to Locrian. Where that breaks down is when you're actually trying to apply the scales. It's not exactly the most helpful way to think about it. It can be helpful because if you know what key you're in, you can figure out that basically certain chord changes are all just using the same major scale, just in a different mode, if that makes sense. The next helpful way to think about modes is by understanding each one individually, understanding what chords they can be used with, and in the context of the key that you're in. So, for instance, we'll start with the major scale. The major scale you typically use over major chords, if that's not obvious enough. And specifically major 7, major 9, if a 6 chord, it'll sound like this. Here's just a plain old C7 chord I'm playing on the keys. Just kind of riffing on the C major scale. An actual bass line might be like. So that was all just C major scale. I was also kind of focusing on chord tones in my head because we have the C major 7 arpeggio just like that. So the next mode I'm actually going to talk about is not the second mode, the third mode, but the fourth mode, and that would be Lydian. The reason we're doing that next is because all it is the major scale with that sharp 4. In this case, it would be the fourth mode of the G major scale. We're going to think of it as C Lydian, which is C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. And this you would also use over a major 7 chord, major 9, major chord, 6 chord. So here's that same chord, but this is with the Lydian scale now. That sharp 4 really gives it a very distinct sound. Very Lydian. Such fourth. Which brings me to the next concept, which I'm going to talk about something I'm coining chord pairs to help you understand how this works. We're going to go back and forth between C major 7 and G major, or G6 in this case. We're going to think of this as in we're in G major. So we're going to use the G major scale, which also is C Lydian. So if you kind of use those, just jam a little bit. Accidentally played G Lydian. You can hear how the C Lydian sound works in the context of G really well. While you can technically use Lydian over a major chord, if you're in the key of C, you don't want to use C Lydian. But if you're in the key of G, then yeah, you do want to use C Lydian. So basically, it's if C's your 4 chord, then yeah, you can think about C Lydian in that case. The next mode we're going to talk about is the fifth mode, which is Mixolydan. And the reason we're going to do that one next is because it's also the same as the major scale. Here's C major scale. All the same until we get to that 7th, and it's lower to half step. So we have a flat 7. And you'll use this typically over dominant sounds. So I got the C13 jam queued up. I'm gonna go ahead and play that. So here's just the straight up Mixolydian scale. So we got C, B flat, A, G, F, E, G, C. That flat 7th, in the context of the major sounds, makes this one of the funkiest scales you could possibly use. Check it out. Jam on this all day. That's going to bring me to my next chord pair, which is going to be C13 and F major. C is the 5 and F, dominant, Mixolydian. Here we go. There's our C, F, so hopefully you're starting to understand why it's so crucial to understand each scale pattern on its own, just each Mixolydian pattern, each Lydian pattern, each Dorian pattern, because it just makes it so much easier to utilize the scale in the context. That brings me to the last 2 modes I'm going to cover in this video. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button underneath and the subscribe button if you've gained anything from this video. I have tons of other videos, and I've got a bunch planned as well. There's only 2 more modes I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over Dorian and the minor mode, Aeolian. I'm not going to get into Locrian and Phrygian. If this video does really well, I will maybe do a video on Locrian and Phrygian, but they're a little more nuanced. So the minor scale, let's do that first. We'll do C minor. That's going to be this shape. And what this is the major scale with a flat 3 instead of the major third, a flat 6, flat 7. So here's a little C minor jam. Got a C minor 9 chord going on the keys, and there's the C minor scale. Obviously, you can use the minor scale over minor chords. You're in a minor key, and it's your root note, or if you're in a major key and you're playing over the 6 chord, right? That's kind of the 2 minor scale, full-on minor scale situations. Okay, next I have an E major 7 chord to a C minor 7 chord. So that's the minor scale, also known as Aeolian. Let's jump into Dorian. So C Dorian is the same as the minor scale, but with a natural 6, with a raised 6. You can think about it. So in C we have C, D, E flat, F, G, A natural, B flat, C. Here's the C minor chord. Next, for the Dorian scale, I have a chord pair, and this one's going to go between Dorian and Mixolydan, actually. So it's going to be a classic funk 2-chord vamp. E minor, 7, and A, well, play A13, A7. Basically, E minor and A dominant. So essentially, we're going to use E Dorian and A Mixolydan. Or you could do it here. E Dorian and A Mixolydan. You might know a tune called Good Times, which is literally these two scales. It goes, and then right up, E Dorian, back to A. That little A Mixolydan. The two most important notes that make it Mixolydian is the major 6 and the flat 7. Well, I guess technically the C sharp would have to be in there. But the chord is an A dominant chord. Enough blabbering. Let me play the chord pair. So here's our A minor. Sorry. Here's our E minor to the A. Here we go. Just jam a little bit. Again, that was the E Dorian, A Mixolydan.